guide us this afternoon as we make our decisions. In Christ's name. Amen. Okay, this is a 3:15 special call meeting of the Newnan City Council for a work session continue to discuss the Jackson-Jefferson-Clark Transportation Corridor and the discussion of a couple of our commissions and boards and their structure. So, Mr. Clark, how are you?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We have our consultants, Low Engineer, here again, and Samir is here, and he will make his presentation. He's got a different PowerPoint that it may be a little easier to understand what he's trying to tell you, but then it'll be completely opened up for a question and answer and comments.
All right. Thank you.
Did you know which one? Yes. Well, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I know we discussed this a little bit last time, but just wanted to give you a brief background on what the thought process is. Not very specific in terms of costs or schedule. I've provided a general schedule in there, but just wanted to let you know what the scope could be. We can make it as big as we want. We can make it as small as we want. Well, not too small, because there are certain things that we really need to do in order to conduct the study. But I'll give you an idea of what's going on. So the council would like to analyze the effects of converting both Jackson and Jefferson into a two-way street configuration. Currently, it's a one-way street a one-way pair. Now, the limits, we never discussed the limits of the project. So I went from Clark Street, just a little north of Clark Street, down to, I don't even know, how do you say that place? Long Place? Salbeedi Avenue. And, well, I'm discussing the scope in the following slides. So data collection, I think that's where our success lies, is what kind of data we collect and how we use it. I mean, you have the regular vehicular data. You've got the peak hour TMCs, turning movement counts. In this situation, not just weekdays, but weekends as well, because you've got churches and those kind of things that do drive the traffic quite a bit. Plus, you've got the morning breakfast rush on Sundays. We need 24-hour tubes in certain locations. And then there are intersections where we initially would like to capture 12-hour data just to see if we meet the signal warrants or not. Because it's based on feeling right now, whether it's going to meet the warrants or not. There may be a situation after we do the capacity analysis, like, hey, it's failing under every different type of alternative. We might have to just go back and collect that data at individual intersections. Parking's huge. Parking right now, we've got parallel and angle parking on both sides of both streets, and there's parking decks, there's parking in the back of the buildings. It's a hodgepodge of parking everywhere, and that's, I think, going to be, well, parking will decide if it's a success or not, because parking leads to your walk times, your access to businesses. I mean, it's just a huge thing. Pedestrian counts, just to get a feel for, the counts will be a little bit special, not just the number of pedestrians. And Emily right here was just telling me there's an AI app that tracks how long it takes and how pedestrians make decisions to when to jaywalk, when not to jaywalk. Do we need to give a mid-block crossing or not? Parking occupancy counts. Occupancy count basically is every hour they go out there and check how many empty spots you have and how many filled spots you have. That gives us an idea of what the peak hours are for, because your vehicular peak hour may change from your parking peak hours. Accident data, we've got accident data for the northern portion of the downtown area, but not the entirety of it. So we'll definitely go down all the way to the south. Lane configurations, we've got tons of devices. We've got traffic signals. We've got lane. Right now, because it's a one-way pair, your signal head configurations are completely different. They'll have to change. I was also thinking of certain devices like beacons where people might cross the road, because earlier in the day I said people may try to find the shortest path, and we will see jaywalking now. We've got parking on both sides. We've got traffic going up and down on the same side of Jackson and Jefferson. Don't want people getting hit. And then the land use data in terms of where the offices are, where the retail is, where the restaurants are, and how people are making those movements from their vehicles into those land uses. So this is about safety. We've got only data at 4 intersections right now. We'll have to definitely go down to every intersection and every segment of the roadway for intensity, frequency, the type of crashes that we're having right now. And we may have to use some outside data, because the crash type at a one-way pair is very different from a crash type on a two-way road. So we'll pull some of that data from historic trends, understand the causes behind the crashes, recommend mitigation measures, and then it could be signing, it could be marking, it could be geometric changes, it could be parking changes. I know most people don't want to hear that. We may have to change the control at some of those intersections, and then the emergency vehicle operations. How soon can they get there, and how soon can they go to the hospitals? Like I said, parking is the number one key here. Two types of parking right now. There's on-road and there's off-road. When I say off-road, it's predominantly in the back of the buildings, and each land use has its own parking in the back of the buildings. But then you also have parallel and angle. So you have to look at parking operations. Parking data will give us the frequency, intensity, peak hours, effects on businesses, location of parking spot sources, how the businesses fare, availability of the parking, at least under current situation, how it goes up and down during the day and during weekdays and weekends, and what the effects of parking on the vehicular operations. Because right now you have a one-way pair, you've got 2 lanes in the middle, and you've got angle parking backing out onto the road. And yes, the speeds are slower in this whole area, but now once we have a 2-way pair, how is that parking going to affect some of those operations? Delays might go up, and crashes might go up, so we need to look into that a little bit. Pedestrians, crosswalks, and devices. So I think,
Excuse me for a moment.
Sure.
Could you speak a little louder?
Sure.
or
Maybe I'm not
something
using the
for
mic well.
Volume?
absolutely. Do you want me to go back?
No.
There you go.
Or hold it. Sometimes I hold it.
Thank you.
Yes, we do see quite a bit of pedestrian activity. I just want to know whether it's higher during the weekdays versus the weekends, and I know it's going to be higher during the weekdays, but I want to know per car how many pedestrians we're seeing. Are they crossing the side streets? Are they crossing the main line right now? Where are they crossing? Because there are certain segments where you've got over 1,000 feet, maybe 1,200 feet between the intersections. People are not going to walk that extra 1,000 feet just to be able to go across the street. And so maybe there might be a situation where we need a beacon or something that helps the pedestrians cross, maybe a mid-block crossing, maybe not. I might be getting too ahead of myself here. Definitely we have the availability of sidewalks, so that's a great thing. Those sidewalks are connected to the back alleys and the side streets, which is pretty good. The demographics of the pedestrians, what age group are we looking at? Where are they going? Why are they using sidewalks? Are they just morning joggers, or are they going to their offices? Are they going to just shop? We need to understand all of that. I do not know what I hit. Capacity analysis, that's the heart of the analysis. At the end of the day, we don't want to do all of this if it's going to affect the capacity of the downtown area. The throughput is important. How many cars are we pushing throughout the day? And I was telling Katie this, most of the times earlier the guy was talking about a road diet when you go from 4 lanes to, let's say, 2 lanes. And all of a sudden people get concerned that now less cars are going to travel, let's say in a given 30-minute peak hour period. It's actually the opposite. When you slow traffic down, the headways between cars tend to be smaller, so cars are traveling closer to each other, which actually increases the throughput of the whole roadway segment. So will it definitely do that? I can't guarantee that's what's been seen in the past, but there's a big chance that we might be able to push more cars with lower speeds, although the simulation softwares are not built to consider that. This is based on observations and studies that have been done in the past. And so we'll look at the existing whole downtown area, how it's performing in terms of level of service, and then what it will do 20 years from now, and then what it will do now if you were to convert a one-way pair into a two-way pair, and what it will do 20 years from now, and then what kind of intersection control do you need? Can we put roundabouts in? Do we need different kinds of signals? Do we need to remove certain signals? Because there are a lot of places where signals have been installed and the expected traffic never arrived, and so we might do signal warrant analysis at those intersections to see if we need to remove that equipment and maybe put it somewhere else for the best use of those things. And then there will be several alternatives. We'll try different lane configurations within the right-of-way, within what we can play with. So that's going to be intense, and it's going to give us a lot of results. Other analysis, you're going to have signal warrant analysis, you've got turn lane warrant analysis, although turn lane warrant analysis really doesn't we've got a limited number of width to the road, and I mean, we can't go beyond, what's that, 12 plus 12, 24 plus, I think the parking spots are 11, so 24 plus 22, that's 46 feet is what we're playing with. And if it's a GDOT road, we have to do an ICE analysis on every one of them, intersection control evaluation analysis. And then I looked at the schedule, the data collection is probably, if I were to give, and I don't think one company can do the entire data collection. Some of the special data collection will have to use a couple of different companies, but if you can assign them a task at the same time, I think 2 weeks should be good. And this is a very optimistic schedule. It says 2 weeks, but it takes 2 weeks for them to collect, a week for them to process it somewhere in Philippines, or then it takes another week to come back. I mean, so this can get pushed out a little bit. We take that data, we forecast it based on demographics, historic trends. We were just reading a document when we got here, and she was telling me that some of the buildings are going to have another floor added to it, which means more people coming in, which means more cars coming in. There's development permits that are coming in, so there's going to be more traffic. So using that data to see what the near-term growth is going to be, what the 20-year growth is going to be. Safety analysis is fairly easy. We use, they ask for 3 years worth of data, we go back to 5. Then the capacity analysis will probably be done in 2 different phases, one for the no build and one for the build under existing conditions, under future conditions. Parking analysis can be started early, so that 1 week for the data collection, another couple of weeks to analyze the whole data. Signing and marking is going to be huge because we're going to change lane configurations. We might change the intersection controls. We're changing parking, and we may change parking in certain places. We may change, well, we're converting it from one way to 2 way. So marking is going to be important. Signing is going to be important. And then I put in some meetings here and there. I don't know how many of those, and probably take us 4 weeks to summarize all of that, because we will start the report from week 3 and start putting it together, and then by the end of the project should take another 4 or 5 weeks to complete the report. But that's what I envision for this project. Now, there's a lot of details that we could get into, but it's impossible to get into all of that right now. Questions?
So that was basically an overview of the scope for evaluating the entire downtown to two-way conversion, not the Signal project. That's the other part that we'll talk more about.
Councilman Thomas'
Yes,
request.
that you had asked us to, so that, I asked him to describe the scope generally.
Yeah.
What would be involved with that.
Okay, anyone?
One thing is, depending on when you start, I know that school, like Newnan High School especially, affects traffic through town at 8 o'clock in the morning and 3:30 in the afternoon. So if you do things in the summer when school's not in, it doesn't reflect what happens 9 months out of the year. So
A great question. We are not allowed to do counts when school's not in session. So when there are schools, what we do is the morning peak, what we collect is 7 to 9. When there's schools, we don't go 4 to 6, we go 2:30 to 6 o'clock. So that data is extended a little bit further.
Anything else? Okay, so we move on to the corridor,
Yes.
Well,
all right?
before we go into the quarter, I mean, I love the creativity, but as you can see, it's pretty complex.
It is very complex.
Analysis. So I guess, is there interest in formulating this into a proposal? And if it is, it would certainly affect the intersection that you're going to talk about, correct?
Absolutely.
Or is this a complex issue that's down the road? I mean, because we can't even throw a dollar figure at you until we get deep into this.
Absolutely.
Because it involves about how many intersections? I think it's like 14, if I look at it.
20,
Huh?
21?
21?
Well, and then I think if you throw in the 57 East Broad project, and we're talking about things up towards the police station, we really don't have in place all the things that are gonna happen in the future. You'd have to look at those.
As someone who lived through streetscapes and what it did, thank you. and what it did to our merchant population in downtown Newnan, devastating some of them, I would not be in favor of trying to go through the work that would take place on these streets in our downtown that I think would be catastrophic to our downtown area. Not the project, it's not the result of the project, maybe, but, and I say maybe with capital letters, but the work that would go on in front of those businesses for months in order to get that done. You talk about people not wanting to find a parking place in front of somebody's business and not wanting to go there because they couldn't find that parking place. This would be catastrophic. I'm not in favor of this going into proposal because of that. Others need to speak there.
I don't know how I survived streetscape, but we survived, but just barely.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Well, I don't think at this time in our,
Well, I don't know the
Wait.
answer. I understand about streetscape, but I know that it was the best thing we did for the downtown in the long run. It set the tone, it cleaned up a lot of problems we had, and to me, that's one reason our downtown is so successful today, because it's subject to the streetscape. So I don't know the answer. I don't think anybody.
but to me, well, for me, in the state of where things are within the city and everything is, I'll just kind of piggyback on what Councilman DeBose said and the mayor, of what we're proposing, what's coming, and the possibilities, and the many possibilities, to me, this would be the kind of the last thing that I'd want to see an undertaking at this particular time until we've at least got a good hold on the next, I would say, next 3 to 5 years of what we're going to be proposing and what we're going to be starting. I agree. I don't think we don't want anything hindering or cannibalizing business at this particular time. I think at a very fragile time in our economy, truthfully. So I would agree that that's why there's a pause button on a recorder. I would say hit the pause button and move on.
Am I allowed to make a suggestion? So we're talking about converting one-way to a two-way, but what we can do is just a few elements of it that help with the growth of the downtown area, like parking. Look at the parking, if parking's enough or not. There are certain elements. Safety is, are we having crashes? Have they gone down? Have they gone up? I'm not trying to create any work here. I'm just trying to see if I can help with certain elements of those that go towards the future plan that you have for the downtown without changing the operations. That's something that you can think about.
I've got a question. This goes to the whole signaling and pedestrian, and I know you're talking about all this stuff. How would it affect, theoretically, you're talking about jaywalkers, people using the sidewalks and the crosswalks. If we basically deactivate the pedestrian lights until someone pushes the button to expedite the flow, because those are on a timer, and oftentimes you sit in an intersection, there's nobody coming, or it piles up, it stacks up because you're waiting for the light to time through the pedestrian thing.
Absolutely.
And if you look at our busy corridors around the entire city, and it really does, it stops a lot of traffic from flowing. Is that a viable option as well? And maybe in an intermediary, as we try to keep the flow moving.
Usually those pre-timed timers are used in downtown areas where you have tremendous amount of pedestrians that you expect certain amount of pedestrians per cycle. If you're not seeing that there's no evidence of people crossing during every cycle, moving back to a pedestrian push button, maybe a better idea. Now, you have to look at the ROI on it. You're gonna swap them out for push buttons and the costs associated with it versus the savings that you're gonna have from, and one of the savings could be just the efficiency of the corridor, but how do you measure it? I mean, how are you gonna measure it in terms of throughput? Are you gonna measure it in terms of the emissions saved? I mean, there's multiple KPIs that you can look at, but what are we trying to achieve by doing that? The throughput of the cars is what I think you're alluding to. It definitely will help if we don't have evidence of enough pedestrians out there.
Right, because we already have the push buttons. It's just, they're also on a timer anyways.
You can,
So, I think
that
it's
should
kind
be
of a-
easy to change
Are you
that.
saying take out automatic stopping
No.
and pedestrian has to push the button for it to stop?
Either that or, you don't even get the crossing, the little light on for the pedestrians to show up until someone pushes the button. Because it has to cycle through the time, and that takes up quite a bit of time.
I don't say that. To me, what it does is help maintain the slower speed of traffic through the town, because people fly, they see ahead of thing green lights, and there's nothing ever stopping them. And we've tried to enforce our 25-mile-an-hour zone, which, on certain days is great, and some days people are going about 50. So to me, I like the fact that traffic has to stop whether there's somebody coming or not, because some of those people really need to slow down in the first place.
Well, I'm not saying not to have it, because the light still the light still cycles, for the
So
traffic.
you're saying not have a pedestrian unless you push the button?
Correct, because
See, to me-
otherwise the pedestrian, it's a time, it goes to the little walking man there for a while, and then it does a countdown for quite some time, and that countdown, the entire time cycle is pretty lengthy.
But to me, what
And so you still
happens-
get this flow of traffic.
I mean, I worked downtown, and I observed people, especially they were not from Newnan, and they would stand there and wait through 2 cycles of that light before they realized they had to push the button to get across. We fussed about, especially the north and south traffic, because somebody was sitting there and just wait for the light to change for them, and then they didn't realize they had to push that button. So to me, I like the fact on the main streets right through here, that as soon as that light changes to green, and at some point in time, the pedestrian can walk, and they don't have to push the button, because I'm telling you, we have enough visitors that don't realize they have to push the button.
I think if we do this, it'd be worth considering as an option.
My only comment with that is, to you, is that really going to make a huge difference if we did anything with the pedestrian lights? That would be, to me, I don't see how that, it's just a minor possibility of fixing it. You said earlier, I think you said there's 21 intersections involved in this project. And the comment that was stuck out to me was, we have absolutely $0 that you can even throw at this thing as to what. So if you were to, not hold you to anything, just guesstimate a dollar value attached to this, what would that look like?
See, the data collection part's sent out. I don't know. If I were to just throw a number that I'm not.
That's all, I'm just throwing a number
You're
out.
not writing it down, are you?
It's off the record.
Are you talking about study or actual
I'm not,
construction?
well, I'm talking about, we're going to have a study, which is going to be a few, but that being said, I'm talking about construction of it.
Many million.
I think the study will be somewhere between 150 to 200,000. Usually the study is 10% of the construction cost, not in this case. I
All
don't
right,
think so.
okay.
I think it's more like 5% of the construction
All right,
cost.
so that's way lower than I would have thought.
I think the reason I was thinking about it, and I'm not a traffic person, so when I threw the idea out, it's more like, what, just as a starting point to get us thinking more than just the Clark Street intersection. When I look at downtown today, and y'all just mentioned it, it's a destination. And I was here in the 70s, I think, when it went one way. I don't know why, but I can tell you back then, no one was stopping in downtown Newnan. You just went on through it. So if the current flow gets people through downtown Newnan quickly, then I would say that the one-way is successful. But I would say, what I see Newnan over time is downtown being more of a pedestrian destination where you come, you hang out, and you're not just trying to use it to get through to somewhere else.
Sure.
And hopefully they'll, over time, people figure out a better way to get around downtown Newnan, because downtown Newnan is, like going into Summer Grove. That's not the best cut-throughs, because you got to stop a lot, it's residential. So I personally see Newnan being more like that. And with all the Andrews stuff, with 57, you just got more destinations piling on top of each other. So I think we've got to decide do we want downtown Newnan to be a place that you just get through really quickly? Or do we want it to be a place where, if you're coming that way, we want you to be purposeful and, and honor the slowness of and the pedestrian-friendly part of it? And I don't know if that's shrinking streets, the whatever you call the diet.
Road diet.
Yep, the diet. You love Greenville, y'all been there. I mean, that's a pretty interesting street. That's not a thoroughfare. It's not 4 lanes going through downtown Greenville. Yeah, and so they've got a lot of wide sidewalks. I mean, I would just like us personally to take a step and just think outside the box and say, okay, and I know it costs money, so I'm not saying I'm in favor of whatever number, so I'd like to understand, but I'd like to just see what it would look like to have wider sidewalks. We obviously need to have parking. That's been talked about for years. I think everybody knows we need to address that with the parking deck. But where that might be, what wide sidewalks look like, in a perfect world, if we were rebuild Newnan today with the next 20, 30, 40 years of becoming a destination, what we want it to look like. And maybe I would personally just like to see that and then say, okay, what of that can we afford? What's reasonable? What makes sense? That was really my thinking on throwing this big project out.
Is your vision eat, play, and live, or just eat, play, and go back home?
The live thing is interesting because I live downtown and I consider myself living downtown, but I'm 3/8 of a mile away. So I don't know what you consider live.
Well,
I'm not talking dense housing right on top of the course.
That's what I was asking.
So I don't consider that the only live.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll personally, just to throw it out, I would like to see a number on this. As Councilman Paul mentioned, I don't know if that would cost us anything, what that costs us to get a number, but.
No.
I think that would be a reasonable next step for me to see.
I'm actually waiting for the data collection company to get a number back to me. We gave them yesterday we send them the requirements. Usually they turn it around in 4 hours. They just haven't yet. Probably be tomorrow. By tomorrow they should be able to give a number. And I should be able to provide you a number by, I tend to, let's say end of day Friday.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, is that
Yeah, I
Okay.
appreciate that, yeah, thank you.
all right? So now we move on to the corridor? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. If we could start off by if there are 1, 2, or 3 goals you're trying to accomplish by the redesign, if you could just very clearly state those first.
Sure. Number one is the travel time, and that travel time goes for people, commuters that use it, and also the emergency personnel. That's a huge amount of saving in terms of time. Number two, the efficiency of the intersections the way they are right now versus what they're going to be 20 years from now with the current configuration of people going down to Posey and then going back up versus people using that short distance. I think the efficiency not only does not deteriorate, it actually gets better. So in terms of level of service, I think it's a better option. And signals is the only way to go. Unless we want to spend time and money and maybe a few court battles to acquire some of the properties that are deemed as historic, and you've got a cemetery, and we start acquiring right away and have a lot of disgruntled and unhappy citizens where we start buying stuff. I think signals on both sides is the best way forward. It increases efficiency, it increases safety, it decreases your travel time, it helps your emergency personnel, and with their response times, I do not understand how going down to Posey and going back up makes sense unless you are someone that's lived in Newnan for a long time. For someone coming from outside right now, first of all, it takes me 10 seconds to look at the signs like, where am I going? To having another kink in the whole thing where you have to go down south and then come back up north. I think overall, I don't know if I answered that question in 3 different distinct points, but it absolutely makes sense in my mind to have a two-way pair. We've tried every possible scenario. We've analyzed every bit of it, and we've validated our models, we've calibrated our models to make sure that we're conducting real-life situations. Even under the current situations, it's a fairly good model of what's to come.
Okay, so every model that you looked at here, did that include the model of drastically changing the signage so that the direction would be clear to a traveler who's coming in.
Absolutely.
In addition, not just the signage, but in addition to that, road signage, so that you know when you're on Bullsboro, the lane you need to be in the road.
Yep.
So that you're,
There will be pavement markings and signage, and we start the signage right by the interstate. So there's a cluster, there's overhead signs that show you where the bypass is,
right.
and then they show you
Okay.
all the way from there, it starts to the end of the project.
So how do you know that signage would not accomplish increasing the travel times and efficiency if we don't try it first? Versus 2 million, I think it's a $2 million project. I don't think it's $1.5 million.
Well,
Because I
signage
think
is-
by the time, if you'll let me finish, if I think by the time you go out and you bid a $1.5 million project, you're at 2 million in today's market. None of this money comes from anybody except us. Am I correct, Mr. Phillips?
This is locally funded.
This is local funding. And this is my opinion. Everybody else has got theirs. Today is an opportunity for you to speak your opinion. I'm going to say what I need to say, and then I'm going to stop. But I think for us not to look at a complete rework of the whole signage package with cooperation from DOT, and by that I mean talking to them and saying, no, that sign's not going to work because you've tried that before and it's still confusing after that, not after they put it up, but they model it. The signs that are out there now tell no one a thing about where they need to go
Yep.
if you're not from here.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Yep.
So they're useless. And until we put signage up on the street and in the air that tells people where to go and how to get there, I think spending $2 million on this project that can never be reversed unless you're gonna spend another $2 or $3 million to reverse it
Sure.
is folly. That's my opinion.
Okay.
Gentlemen, at this point, I'm gonna stop. He can make his
I don't
presentation.
know about the dollar figures, but I don't think just signs are gonna help it. Try to explain to somebody to turn right, cross the lane turn right off of Clark, then cross the lane onto Jackson to the next lane, and by the next intersection, you've got to be able to turn left into there. It's difficult. I don't care whether you got somebody riding your car and try to tell them that. You can't do it with the sign very well. And I've been running through Newnan since 1977, pretty much on that street and on back to the high school, and walk 2 days a week still. And I see people get broadsided at Jackson and Clark because either somebody runs the red light, but also the fact that they don't know where to go if they're not from here, and they're confused and they stop in the middle of the road sometimes and everything. I just think we've got to make a change there over what we've got, because if you could fix it, you wouldn't let the buildings be there, and we're not going to fix that part of it. But I think signage would help, but also we got to look at what the possibilities of fixing the traffic flow, which, like you said, cuts out that loop right there. I just think that's a real problem, is the loop. And I remember in the 60s when it wasn't that way and went the wrong way on Posey Street because I turned left, and it takes time to get used to it. But I just think that loop down there is just crazy, where somebody comes in on Clark, and if I was that person, I would probably come down Temple Avenue and turn and go straight across real quick early in the morning when I see them, because they don't know a lot of them do know what they're doing, a lot of them don't know what they're doing. So I just think we ought to look at the real changes, because I don't think the signage in itself is it may make it a little bit better, but it's not as good a future help as fixing the whole intersection.
Oh, I'm not saying we don't need to listen to the presentation and look at the real changes, but I've got other comments during that presentation about traffic flow and red lights and turning right and turning left that I think create stacking issues, not just the signage thing, but stacking issues that are going to create a lot of havoc in that traffic pattern. Going down to Posey and turning left is going to be pale in comparison to the stacking issues that we're going to have, because there are no turn lanes. You said yourself, you can't acquire property. There's no right-of-way acquisition. There are no turn lanes. And when somebody can't turn left because somebody else in front of them, and you made this point today, you said that as long as this light is green coming into town on Jackson and people are turning left, this light over here to get them on out Bullsboro is always going to be green. That's not gonna happen. All you gotta do is go through downtown Newnan every other day, and the lights that are supposed to be green all the way through town don't work. And that light is not gonna work, and these people who are trying to turn left when that light is red is gonna stack up all that traffic going north on Jackson Street behind them. And it's gonna cycle through every time and take several cycles to get that traffic through there. So you're backing up people who are trying to go into downtown, whether they need to make that, they wouldn't have to make that
You're talking
turn
about
on
turning left
Posley.
when you're coming south from Jackson.
I'm talking about going south from our house into downtown. The left turn is not a dedicated left turn lane because there's no stacking, there's no room there for a dedicated left turn lane, right?
I don't know where you live.
Coming north.
We come down
If
Jackson
you're
Street.
coming, if
Highway.
you're
Okay.
going south
Okay,
into town from
Correct.
Jackson Street, from Sprayberry's Barbecue.
Right.
If you do that, there's no dedicated left turn lane, correct?
there will be a dedicated left turn lane.
Where are you gonna get that?
We've got a left turn,
That asphalt. There's no room there to put a dedicated left turn
we
lane.
have 48 feet of width in that section. Those lanes are wide, they're not 12-foot lanes.
Okay,
So we're removing those existing markings and redoing the striping on the road.
to make sure you have time, I'll stop talking. If we'll leave our comments off until after you
Sure.
get through the presentation. How about that?
There you go.
Right.
So you definitely have a dedicated left turn lane and a through right turn lane in the westbound direction, and then you have a left turn lane in the eastbound direction.
Can you zoom in on that intersection?
Bottom right,
Can you zoom in on the whole thing?
that's what we're looking at, bottom right.
Or hit,
Over here.
There you go.
Yeah, thanks.
What about the length of the turn lane? Has that been designed for
absolutely. We even thought about have you ever been on a diverging diamond bridge? We even tried that to see if we could look at it as a bridge and see if we can reverse the operations to make it more efficient. If it was a little bit longer, we could have achieved that. Geometrically, we can't, so we've had to, this is the best configuration we could come up with.
Those reverse lanes are pretty good, very confusing.
But they're pretty intuitive. Once you get in it, you just don't know you're on the wrong side.
I mean, but to the mayor's point, folks that have never seen those, that's a catastrophe in the works.
No, there has to be an outreach campaign before this is implemented where the citizens know what to expect. We just can't put it out there on day one.
So, quick question, I'm not familiar how this process works, you're talking about signage. I imagine a lot of folks that aren't familiar with Newnan, younger folks, anybody, really, they use GPS. How does the GPS system work with this to kind of preload people, stay in this lane to be able to do this, do that, you know what I'm saying?
It will
To
reflect
give
it.
good audio, type of directions and the visual directions to people, in addition to, I don't know how the process to make sure that all the different GPS companies put out all, those good verbals. Because that would potentially, in my mind, help a lot of people, because they're not even paying attention to the roads. They're listening to and watching the GPS the whole time.
I mean, to me, I'm trying to think myself, if I came into another town, to me, this has got some common, and listen, I'm one, I've done this the other way a long time. But for me, common sense, if I know I'm trying to go north and I get to this crazy intersection, then I go north, and I can already do that today. But if I'm coming off of Clark Street and I know I want to go north or west on Bullsboro, intuitively, I'm not thinking I need to go south and then do that jog. And so then I got to figure out what is going on here. So this new way, if I'm coming off Clark and I want to go out Bullsboro, it's just common sense. It's like every other street pretty much in America, except for a few in Newnan. And so, I don't know if it's gonna work, but I feel like it would work based on just my, you know, way I normally drive.
Maybe we make a traffic circle around the 75 Jackson property.
I think the traffic circles are cool, but we don't have that option. Hey, could I just, historically, because I came on the council in January, why were you engaged? Just so we can restate the scope of this initially, what was the reason for this?
So you're gonna have to help me a little bit, because it started with Tracy Donovan. It was a planning STBG grant, or we did an LCI study. Local Cities Initiative? Livable Cities Initiative. And they go through and they try to identify potential projects for, what's the goal? Just various things, various improvements.
Yeah, pedestrians, walkability, efficiency, safety, all of the things.
Yeah, okay.
And I think we started this with the idea that it wasn't pedestrian friendly. That could have been your third point out of the three, the crosswalk situation.
That's for sure.
And, because, with the continuous flows, you can't cross there, so
Right.
that was one of them. But we got a grant, through GDOT, I believe, or
Initially through ARC, then transfer to GDOT.
transferred to GDOT, and we engaged them to come in and basically do a traffic study and come up with alternatives to meet the goals that we wanted. And once we got to the alternatives, we worked with GDOT, and we threw it into a design phase, and that's where we are now, the design phase. You're 60, 70%. 90% in the design phase, and we're, wanting to know what to do now, so.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so you aren't just down here trying to pick up work. We had to identify this intersection was a problem years ago to even get this on the list. So we've known about this intersection causing problems. That's why we put it on the list, and then we used that funding to have this study today to try to address problems that we've known about for years. Okay, excellent, thank you.
So the one that we went through last time?
I think they may want to see the modeling, the videos that
Okay.
you performed. You
Because I
wanna show-
couldn't see those videos
Yeah,
on
can
my
you show the,
iPad.
Sure, yeah.
the no build first?
But there's one issue with the model, I'll tell you why. It's because of the conversion of the AVI, if I can show which one. First the no build and then the build one.
Can you-
No, it zooms in on its own. So this is the existing condition, but you see the northbound Jefferson is not moving, it's stopping at a signal. It won't stop, it's free flow right now,
free
and it
flow.
will remain free flow. But if you left it free flow and we try to convert it into an AVI file, it wouldn't do it for some odd reason, so.
So,
These are current conditions.
and then was this ran at peak
This is peak hours.
hour?
Now, this is the PM peak hour.
So where you saw the stacking of was heading into downtown by the cemetery.
That's
was
right.
the major,
That's right.
most stacking.
I mean, even while we were going through some of the design elements, me and Michael came up with the idea that where the cemetery is, past the cemetery, we've got a sidewalk. There's enough, so you've got the two-way left turn lane that has enough distance in it, or width in it, plus the sidewalk, which hardly gets used by pedestrians. If we were to take that extra space and create a new lane that tapers off downstream, we can actually increase the efficiency of the two-way even more by having its own lanes to go.
So y'all talking about taking out the sidewalk in the
Just past-
curve on the east side? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just, one thing is you got vegetation hanging over
That's
half
right,
of it.
that's
It's
right.
very narrow anyhow.
So if you can create an extra lane, that free flow still
Yeah, 'cause
continues.
You could route some of that actually through the cemetery. There's a path to the cemetery. If you wanted to have a sidewalk, you could literally go through that old road bed of the
Absolutely.
cemetery and going out to by the police station or whatever.
So, and then the build one. So that's no build. No build in the sense, no change in geometry. And then build is the new one that we're recommending.
So that's,
sidewalk
you saw,
very simple.
I'm sorry, you saw stacking on a no build
Yeah.
going out Bullsboro from downtown?
Well, the part of Jackson Street, ignore that one because that's we tried to convert that into a file that we can play here, and it just wasn't converting itself to a file. So when we stopped the northbound movement, it was
Okay, so
working.
is this the no build?
This is the no build.
Okay, can you zoom in on the intersection?
This is the build one. This is the build one.
Okay, if this is a build one, I see why that traffic's stacking. But what I'd like to see is how far down the traffic that is leaving downtown, headed out Bullsboro.
Right now, that's stacking right
How
now,
far down it stacks.
right there.
That won't stack at all. That's gonna be free flow. That's what I'm,
Actually, saying that's continuous green lane.
it's got a continuous green. It's gonna,
Stopping now.
no, it's, in the model it doesn't, but when we try to convert it to an AVI, it was stopping, so we tried this and it works, so. It's a free flow
So you're
movement.
saying the far right lane
Far-
going northbound
The
on
far right lane,
stay
It
constant
will
green?
remain free flow. It will have a continuous green to it.
It won't have as much traffic because if you take out the
That's
Rosewood
correct.
loop too.
That's correct.
so what happens when that light is green for people coming from the west?
Making a
and they
left,
want-
They got a lane. They got a left turn lane to go into, don't they?
yeah, that's what we're creating, a new lane
It's
for them.
parallel to the
Only-
continuous flow lane.
Well, when do they merge?
They don't, for way out Bullsboro, I mean, it's
Yeah, we have to
four
take
lane
it further
already.
down.
So you're saying that that north on Jefferson, in the build situation, will still have a no stops, will have a free flow?
Only if you're turning left and going north or west.
Yes, if you're going, yes, okay.
And you already got it, I mean, it packs up really big now.
So how do you guarantee us those traffic lights will always stay in sync?
First of all, there's no guarantees, but there's no guarantees of the kind of traffic you're gonna see. I mean, we use past historic trends to create the future, right? So traffic signal timings need to be updated every 3 years because traffic patterns change every 3 years. And so there's something called field implementation that you have to do periodically to make, there's even clocks on those timings. So when you have coordination, nowadays you've got fiber and you've got, or you've got aerial connection between the signals. Before those things came in, what you had to do was, there's a clock in the controller at one intersection, clock in the other one, and those two clocks are connected. Well-
Can you do, a scenario with traffic flow with the light, one light staying green and this other one going out Bullsboro turning red to see what the stacking is
For the westbound movement,
for the left turn movement?
I mean, how long do you want me to hold that red?
Well, how long are you syncing those traffic?
So which lane
To
you
stay
talking-
green,
which
hold
lane?
on. How long are you syncing those traffic lights to stay green? I want it to fail, I want to see it if it fails and gets completely out of sync with the other light.
Well, I can make it fail to where you can't make a car go through the entire day, so I mean, where do I stop with that?
Okay, let me back up, I misspoke. I want to see it if it goes completely out of sync with the other light, not fails, but
Sure.
goes completely out of sync with the other light, and I'd like to see what that stacking looks like.
Okay, so here's what I can do. Optimize both signals on its own, like they weren't connected with each other.
Sure.
Optimize them and then see what happens. Like they're not coordinated, they're running their best scenario under isolated
Okay.
conditions,
Yeah,
and then see what happens.
Like totally
okay,
asynchronous.
and then I want to see them operating under their worst conditions. That's what concerns me, is not the best conditions. I can live with the best conditions all day long. It's that when we build this thing and they start operating under their worst conditions, and we've got to get engineers out there to sync those lights again, daily, weekly, however long, whatever amount of time, duration it takes to do those things, that's what I'm concerned about.
I don't know how to make it operate under worst conditions. I don't know what you define as, your worst is gonna be different from my worst.
Well, I'll accept your worst.
Okay?
Explain to me what
I
you're,
mean, I'm not hard to
No.
deal with. I mean, I sound like I am, but I'm really
No,
not.
no,
Keith, explain to me what you're talking about, not in sync, which lights are you talking?
Okay, so the light to the, coming into town
On,
from our house,
exactly,
he
okay.
doesn't know where we live, but our house, if that light is green and allowing cars to turn to the left to go out Bullsboro,
Okay,
and then the other light to allow them to turn left again to go out Bullsboro should also be green if those two lights are in sync.
yeah.
What I'd like to see is the light on Jackson Street, green, and the other one allowing to go out Bullsboro, red. And I want to see what that stack looks like, using the
Now,
numbers you've
You
got.
say they get out of sync. In this, don't you sync those up where they have to sync?
There is a history at that intersection of things going awry, and on Friday
Yeah.
afternoon, Cletus has called me many times
Yeah.
saying, get GDOT, something's gone wrong, and they're not synced together. But this is old technology out here right now, and you need to be convinced that the new technology isn't going to fail.
I'm not convinced.
That's what I'm
about
saying.
the
That's what you'd like to
technology
be.
not failing.
Right.
No, that's not gonna happen. But I'm the reason he's calling you, because I'm calling
That's
him when I've turned left out of my office onto Jackson Street coming into downtown, then that light, at Jackson and Clark is syncing, is not in sync, and it's staying green for 10 seconds,
Oh, yeah.
and then red again. You know it.
All the time.
All
If
the
one
time.
car doesn't follow the other car very closely, that light changes red, and because it's set back from the intersection,
They
You
mess-
can make, well,
Mike,
the thresholds.
Yeah.
Mike, it's set back from the intersection, so that's some of that extra time you had, and you wind up either running almost changing the yellow light or running the red light to get through there, and you were the third car.
That's right. If the fourth car in line is texting, and they're not paying any
Exactly.
attention, and they're not
And they
on
should
that
be
wait
arrested for
pad,
texting.
that light
Our
turns,
police chief would get
that
them.
light turns red.
All right,
I see
You
what
know
your
it.
problem is.
I have
I
another-
understand it now.
I have another question you may have covered. When you're talking about that continuous flow going out
Yeah.
Jefferson, what about pedestrians trying to cross? Where are they gonna cross? You gonna go back up to where Posey is?
No, and this was an idea we came up with just literally last meeting, so I need to figure that out, but I'll
Okay.
find a way to do that.
Cause that intersection stripe is on the wrong side of that red line. It should be on the south side instead of the north side, cause you never get, as a pedestrian,
Understand.
to cross it, cause I've been there.
Yes, and we will definitely look into that. I think going back to your problem, I understand what's happening is, I'll give you an example. For example, this model, it says the minimum green time that you can give for a particular movement is 7 seconds. In reality, it's 11 seconds. So now it only gives it 7 seconds. If there's a young engineer coming from GDOT putting in timing, he's gonna look at, okay, it's got the bare minimum is 7, the controller takes only 11 seconds, he's gonna put 11 and walk away, not understanding this real-life situation. So extending those times a little bit longer, and what that range is to stay within the optimum is where good signal timing lies. And that's why it's called an art, but you have to have a good signal timing plan with good ranges and good thresholds on it to be able to make this successful. Just someone coming in and changing it is not gonna work, because your distance between those two intersections is so small that it's critical that they stay in tune, that they're coordinated, they're connected with fiber, not on old technology like clocks, either a Yagi antenna or fiber is what you need to connect those two with. If they're not synchronized, then we're gonna see major problems. They need to be synchronized, and we need to spend money on the fiber between the two intersections. Buried cable, that shouldn't be an issue, but I'm assuming that we're gonna put fiber down. That's an assumption that I've made in my mind, and that's my recommendation as well. We cannot operate them as two separate units.
So who operates the fiber?
The fiber basically is, it goes so, usually when signals are coordinated, there's one master controller that controls all the different controllers at different intersections.
It's just between the signals.
In this particular case, is that GDOT or the city?
I don't know who's running the signals right now.
They're GDOT signals, but, I don't know how to answer this, but, I mean, our consultants would work with the traffic engineers at the district office to optimize the timing, and the two signals operate as one and not independently from each other. But I know what you're saying, GDOT can come in and they can make some changes, but they don't,
I don't mean to interrupt you, go ahead.
no, I know they come in and we've got an issue and they want to do a quick fix, and it may or may not even make it better.
We've
Or it
seen
may
that,
make it better at that point, but then later down the road, it's not better.
we've seen that happen
That's
many times.
right, that's the Friday afternoon.
That's the reason I'm asking who owns the management? It's GDOT.
GDOT.
Okay.
I'm sure they'd be happy to turn it over to us.
I have a question, and maybe it was discussed, and all the other discussion kind of got lost. Going north on Jefferson at Clark, you're saying the far right lane is constant green light. But looking at that, just on Jefferson, north of that, it's only one lane going northbound so when Clark is going, the right lane would have to stop? Or are you saying
Left turn movement from Clark
you'd steal
onto
property from
Jefferson.
somewhere to make a second lane for
Well, you
constantly
got two
going?
lanes
does-
there,
we can
Dustin. You got
separate
the
the
continuous flow,
But then-
and you got the one to the.
I know what you're saying. In the diagram there's one lane.
It is.
Just north of
It is one
Clark.
lane. We're creating a second lane to it.
This is where you're stealing property from the sidewalk.
Correct. So that we
Okay.
put bollards between them, there's physical separation. We give the 900 feet of distance that's required by GDOT, then merge them. So you're outside the influence of the intersection is when you basically make them merge. If you make them merge earlier, then they'll start to spill back into the intersection. It has to be done 800 to 900 feet from the intersection further north.
Have you seen them in Peachtree City?
Yes.
That's similar to what we're talking about here. It's called a Florida high T. One's continuous and then they're separated. You can make your left turn and they don't interact. You cannot change the
And
lane.
you learn to get in the right lane quickly, because you'll get stopped if you stay in that
Exactly.
lane.
Well, in this case, the other two lanes are turning left, so you just have the one option. So it might make it a little easier.
So, okay, a funeral procession leaves McCoon's.
So-
Michael, you,
Well, they will use Posey.
this may be a good time. Councilman Gion, or Mayor Pro Tem Gion, wanted our police chief to come up and speak maybe to safety to this issue, not to put you on the spot, but let's do it.
I warned them.
I thought since they deal with
That's a good
everything out there, it'd be a good idea to hear.
I thought this through. I mean, you've seen what this looks like.
Yes, sir.
You know what that looks like now when a funeral procession leaves McCoon's. How does this impact that?
Well, I think for us, we would stop traffic as normal and pull them through, and if we have to stay there a little longer, we'll just pull the traffic until we can get it back flowing
You
properly.
leave the lights going like they were.
Yeah, we would just put officers in the intersections and,
Okay, so
and do the escort.
business as usual?
Yes, sir.
For you. Okay, then will you go ahead and comment, or do you want to ask the question on public safety?
No, I like, from what you've heard and what you're seeing and in the discussions and the questions, what is your take on what you're viewing as to, I mean, you guys answer the calls on the accidents, and so is this a viable thing? Is it something that you would, won't put you on the spot, endorse, or a possibility? You see,
I think the best way I can answer it, as far as the intersection as it is now, we do have a lot of accidents in the intersection currently. I'm not an engineer, but, you know, an option of a two-way traffic may limit some of the accidents we deal with, but ultimately our job is to look for safety. Our job is the concern of what makes it safer out there on the roadway.
that's a great comment. So from the safety aspect of things, you would say that a two-way there would be safer than what's existing now?
It's possible, but I can't sit here and give you.
In the
one
realm of
answer to that.
possibilities, it's
I
possible.
can tell you currently, right now, we do have a high number of accidents that
Sure.
occur in that intersection, but I think it's, council's even made it very clear, we all agree that the signage and how you drive through that's very difficult right now to know which lane to be in and where to go.
Yeah, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Chief, but I thought your observation, your eyes, and what you've just noticed over the years would be beneficial in helping us as we
As
move
far as
forward.
the accidents, the plan probably would benefit us as far as the number, that's just an opinion. But as far as the traffic flow and the backups, I couldn't necessarily comment directly how that will affect as far as the lighting and that goes.
Okay.
Did I give you anything?
Thank you, man. I mean, yeah, thank you, Chief.
Well,
It's-
one thing too, if we change it, the improved signage has gotta help. And the improved quality of signals that are the first class, up-to-date ones, where we can control them and sync them properly and keep them synced over what we have now, would logically improve things too, because I think those signals, they're just, I mean, I don't know how long they've been there, 30 years at least. And DOTs can screw up anything if you give them a chance. So if we take charge of the intersection, we're better off.
Chief, how many, I'm sorry,
No, you go ahead.
ma'am, okay. How many accidents are attributable to someone coming into Jackson Street from the west?
On Clark.
On Clark, and wanting to turn, of course, they've got to turn right to go downtown, they can't go left, they
Yeah,
can't
they
go.
can turn left.
But I can see that, well, they can turn left. I can, and a lot of them go straight, because I see them right in front of my window, going on the wrong way street there. But people who are at that, when that light is red, and the green light for people coming from the north into downtown, people who are running that red light, turning to right, how many, do we have any idea how many accidents are
those
attributable to that?
accidents-
Because I see that all the time.
They're not very prevalent. The majority of the accidents are coming west,
They
making
run
the
that red
turn,
light, and
making the
somebody's
turn
already
on,
started.
on the Clark,
And they don't see them coming because you're
right
set-
there in front of
Yeah,
where
you're
your
s-
office
You're
building
set
is.
back on Jackson, you're coming down and somebody runs that red light, that's where those, the
We have
accidents I see.
more of them on Clark Street where you have the 3 lanes, where we have people changing and merging into the lanes. That's the majority of the accidents that we have.
So those
So-
are like side swipes and
Yes, sir.
things like that. They're not head-on off.
Now, we've had a few, but not, the majority of the accidents we have are the lane changing side
And that
swipes.
block.
Anything else with the chief?
No.
Anyone? Thank you.
Yes,
Appreciate it. What have you not presented? Is there anything that you've got out there that you need to?
Well, so initially, when we finished the study, we submitted it to GDOT. GDOT wanted us to look at travel times for emergency vehicles and also the travel time savings for vehicles other than emergency vehicles. And we put a memo together for them, and there's considerable amount of travel time savings as well. And I don't know if I have the memo. I probably have the memo. I could give you the numbers. But those savings are, there's a table on that. I think it's 25%. God, I need glasses. It's too fuzzy. But it's like 50% in 2041 during the AM peak and 42% during the PM peak. I don't like percentages because percentages are subjective because it's based on 10 different things. I would tell you that there's going to be a ton of savings in terms of travel time and response times. Absolutely. I'm invested in this project. I've been doing this for 6 years, so I want to see it successful. I mean, I'm personally invested in this project, so I couldn't say enough good things about the results of this scenario.
Any other questions? One of the things that I would like to get an answer to is the fiber optics. And you said you assumed that that was going to happen. I don't know that we've looked at that. I don't know that we've contacted GDOT to talk about what they've got at that intersection and how viable it is to get, if there's not fiber optics, and who it belongs to. Does GDOT use just private company fiber optics? They run their own system? Tell us about what, take us.
It would more than likely be GDOT-approved system, but we would put it in the design plans the way we wanted it to be constructed.
Right. So to whom does that fiber belong?
It would belong to GDOT.
Okay?
But let me just tell you something about GDOT right now, too, that GDOT has the legal right to go into any of our signals all over the city right now because we are interconnected in the Atlanta Regional. They don't, but they could. They could go into on Lower Fayetteville Road and manipulate. They don't do it, but that's an agreement we had to get the web-based modem.
So basically, they put, upgrade.
They gave us all of the software and the hardware and the cabinets with the agreement that they can go in there. They let us go in their cabinets as well, but the other thing to keep in mind is GDOT has not completely signed off on this project either. We're still convincing them, they need to be absolutely certain that we have improved the intersection before they'll even sign off on it. So you've got that going on in the background as well.
Okay. Could we find out about the fiber optics from GDOT, and could we get a list of questions that they're pondering to be able to approve this?
He's had those, and we can share those with you. They're working through the plans comments, but I'm not sure what you mean. You want to know the manufacturer or how they work, or?
No, I don't need the manufacturer, as long as I know it's not owned by a private company,
Oh, okay.
that we're at the mercy of a third-party private company and their service level?
No, the
No.
only thing that
Okay
we
with that?
would be that if GDOT has their own timing consultants, that they, like Kimley Horn will come in and check the signals and be on call. Should we call in, Cletus and I, at 4:30 on a Friday afternoon and say we've got an issue, they send a consultant out right on the spot, so.
Okay. Those are the two things I'd like as a follow-up. Gentlemen, anything else from any of you? Any other questions, comments? Anyone? We do have a second item on our agenda today.
That's not
So
me, right?
if we,
Okay.
unless you know something about trees, parks, and cultural art, I think your presentation is complete. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
We
if this
appreciate
isn't gonna take too long, that's great. If it's gonna take a little while, could we take a brief recess?
That suits me. I mean, I hope this doesn't take long. We've discussed these things a couple of times.
Yep.
I can ask a couple of questions and see if we've got consensus, and then we may be able to recess for the evening.
Perfect.
Would you like me to do that? Okay. On cultural arts, let me ask this question first. Do we have a consensus to move from 14 to 7 through attrition?
I'm in agreement with that.
Yes.
Is
Okay.
anybody opposed to that?
No, I'm not
Okay,
opposed.
okay. So that takes care of cultural arts. Trees and Parks Commissions, we had indicated that there are some special duties for each one of those, especially the Tree Commission, with regard to arbitration on some things with the developers. Parks, we have just a couple of things coming up that we'd like to have them involved in, the Bicentennial Park being one of them. Do we want to combine those commissions? Is the question, right?
I'm in favor of combining.
I say yes unless somebody can point out a real negative that's a problem.
Any negatives that you know about, workarounds?
Mr. Bose?
No, the only thing I'm concerned about is the arboretum.
Well, that's Plant Newnan.
Yeah, okay, all right. 'Cause
And,
that's-
and it would come back to whatever, I mean, if we combine these two, it's gonna be parks and trees, or trees and parks. I mean, they're still gonna be challenged and obligated to do certain things for us. There'll only be 7 members rather than 14, and we'll have to figure out how that works.
Yeah,
I think Mr. Craig will
Can I-
have
can I-
a little bit of information that will help you in your decision that probably would support the consolidation.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Council members, in your packet, you had information that was supplemental after last time we got together, it was in addition. So I do believe, there's some, I think you can combine the two. I think the frequency of meeting on the tree commission meets more frequently. They're steadily doing work and not trying to diminish the work of the Parks Commission by any stretch of the matter. They typically meet on an as-needed basis from time to time to talk about any kind of physical improvements. They have met 3 times over the past 2 years. I think that their duties could be easily combined into the tree commission, bless you, and then retain, as the mayor said, kind of that arbitration panel and the activities. So, now,
Okay.
how you get from 14 to 7, maybe through attrition, we look at the terms here. If you pull them together, and we start to go from the 14 down to the 7 through the same method as previously agreed to as for the Cultural Arts Commission.
Okay,
Can I make a comment on that? When you talk about going down from 14 to 7, what I find interesting on page 1 of that is in section 2-205, the appointments of the Trees Commission should have general basis knowledge of fields of arboriculture, landscaping, forestry, contracting, construction, and grading. I think those qualifications, if the current members would be surveyed as to their qualifications, it'd be really an easy process of elimination, quite frankly. If you don't have these qualifications, which it states clearly, you need to have these qualifications or get these qualifications to be appointed, might be a helpful guidance as to how we proceed as to people on it, staying on it or not.
Well, and there also may be an obligation on the city's part to train these folks.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more. So you train them. So they, I think I had this conversation, Councilman Rhodes and I, with Mr. Sears, that they do need additional training, this tree commission, because they do have some serious leverage in many cases. So anyway, that's what I want to say.
So is there a consensus then to combine the tree and parks?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Critco, yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so that ends this item on the agenda. If you've got your direction there, cultural arts through attrition, come back to us with parks and I want to say parks and rec, that's not true. Trees and parks.
Tree and parks.
Trees and parks, and give us your recommendation on attrition or however else you'd like to see that happen. Is there anything else to come before us? I'll entertain a motion, we adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, we adjourn. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you for your time with us.